Hey everybody, welcome back to the Seagull Football Network. I'm Braden. This is my brother Ben. We are continuing and finishing up today our draft prospect look ahead as we're diving in position by position, the draft prospects for the 2025 NFL Draft, and kind of analyzing, talking about some of our favorites. Today we're going to be covering the back end of the defense with cornerbacks, linebackers, and safeties. So we've each picked out 4 different players that we want to talk about from those positions, and we're going to be diving into those in just a second. But first, we do have some news that I want to go over. Starting off, Tyron Smith, left tackle for the Jets this past season, and before that, the Cowboys, has announced that he is retiring from the NFL. He'll be signing a one-day contract with the Cowboys to retire as a Cowboy. He was a 2011 first-round pick, as was Patrick Peterson, cornerback drafted originally by the Arizona Cardinals, who has also announced that he is retiring from the NFL. He started out with the Cardinals, played there for a long time, spent a couple years with the Vikings and then the Steelers, and he is now done with the NFL. He has said that he could keep playing, but that he doesn't want to anymore, so he is done. In other cornerback related news, Jalen Ramsey and the Dolphins have agreed to mutually part ways and are currently seeking a trade opportunity for him. He just signed a contract with them a little bit ago. He just got a bunch of guaranteed money as well. So it's an interesting move there, but they feel that it's time to move on, and they've agreed to try to find a way to do that. And lastly, continuing with the cornerback theme of the night, the Chicago Bears have extended Kyler Gordon on a 3-year, $40 million deal, making him the highest paid slot cornerback in the NFL. Ben, I know you're really excited about Kyler Gordon, but what are your thoughts on all the news coming out this week?
Yeah, starting off, it's really interesting that Tyron Smith and Patrick Peterson are retiring at the same time. Fifth overall and ninth overall picks in the 2011 draft. They were both Hall of Fame All 2010s team players, and they both made 8 Pro Bowls. Both of them were huge for the teams that they were on at the time. Very, very good players for a very long time. As for Peterson's claim that he still could play, the league clearly disagrees because he was not on an NFL roster in 2024, but we'll let him believe what he wants. Good on them both for retiring. Both of them are likely Hall of Famers, so that's pretty big news. As for Jalen Ramsey, as you mentioned, he just signed a contract last year, and at the time, a lot of pundits were questioning whether it was the smartest deal because he is a little bit older. I think he's going on 32. Now, some interesting background on that is if the Dolphins trade him, they will have an immediate cap hit of $25 million dead, which is that's a lot of money to take on by trading him. So that would be an interesting move. Additionally, whichever team takes him on immediately owes him 21.5 mil. So I would expect that the Dolphins are probably going to have to eat part of that salary too if they're going to try to get rid of him because Jalen Ramsey, all-time great corner, but he's certainly not the same player he was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So if a team wants him as a year, 2-year rental, they're probably going to request that the Dolphins cover some of that. As for Kyler Gordon, yeah, I'm super stoked. For the Bears, that's a great deal. He's been, really top 5 slot corner the last couple of years. He's a very versatile player. Plays from the slot, plays in the box. He can blitz. He's come away with at least a sack the last couple of years. Incredible ball hawk player. And I think that he definitely deserves the money he's making. And honestly, it still is well under Chicago's budget to be able to keep him. So a very good signing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to see they keep locking up really solid defensive players. So hopefully they can get their offense caught up. I know they did a lot of work on that this offseason. And I'm interested to see what they'll do in the draft to keep shoring up the offense. Continuing talking about the draft and cornerbacks, let's jump in and talk about our favorite prospects coming up in this draft class. I'll start off with Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan. Yep, we're talking about another defensive Wolverine. We had 2 last time and another one here today. Johnson is a really excellent corner, easily top 3 in this draft class, and I would say that he's the best. I haven't really seen him ranked any lower than 3 by anybody else. He has really impressive instincts and good size at 6'2", 202 pounds. And in his 3 seasons at Michigan, he had 9 total interceptions, 3 of which he returned for touchdowns. Perhaps his biggest weakness is his top end speed. I've seen quite a bit of criticism surrounding his speed. Um, I've seen a lot of people saying he's not going to be fast enough for the NFL to be able to cover any deep threat receivers. I think he will be able to mostly overcome that issue, however, through his technique. In 2022, against Rutgers, there was a play where you could tell that he kind of figured the receiver he was covering was going to be going deep, and even before the snap, was already backpedaling and running backwards. He was correct. The receiver was trying to run a go route, and he easily picked off the pass and returned it pretty far down the field. I mean, it was very impressive. His instincts and his ability to read the offense, I think, will help overcome some of that speed issue. I personally compare him kind of to JC Horn. He's big, he moves really smoothly, and he's confident in his abilities. And JC Horn just got paid the big money, so if Will Johnson can be anything like that, I think he'll have a really solid career in the league. I think there's a good chance that he ends up being a top 10 pick. He could be a little bit lower than that. I think potential fits kind of in the first round are the Raiders, the 49ers, or the team we just talked about having cornerback issues, the Dolphins. What are your thoughts on Will Johnson?
Yeah, I really liked the comparison to J.C. Horn. J.C. Horn coming into the NFL was considered a boomer bust potential, and I think that that tag, while it's a scary tag and it comes with a little bit of yuckiness to it, I think that Will Johnson does fit that label. He is an incredibly talented player. He's, I mean, a huge guy. He's 6'2", almost 200 pounds, and that's big for a corner. Just like J.C. Horn, his best attribute is his press man coverage. He's incredibly physical. He can shut down guys who are much bigger than him with ease. So I think one of the biggest things that he's going to have to really handle and manage at the upper level, same as J.C. Horn, frankly, is being able to minimize risks when taking gambles. He knows he's a talented guy and he plays like it, but sometimes that can give up some huge plays behind him if he's trying to undercut a route and just doesn't realize kind of what's behind him. And so I think if he can really minimize those and learn where he can push it and where he really needs to just stick to what he knows he can do, I think he's going to be an elite cornerback in the NFL. I do like the fit for Miami. It'll be really interesting to see where he'll go though. Definitely middle of the first round at the latest.
Yeah. I've only seen him end up behind Travis Hunter or Jade Barron in any mocks. And I think there's a really good chance he goes before Barron as well.
I think he goes well before Barron. And as for going before Travis Hunter, that is my player, so I'll go ahead and dive into him. And there's a reason that uh, Will Johnson is going after Travis Hunter, and it's not off of pure cornerback skill. As I talked about in the wide receiver episode, Travis Hunter's two-way acumen is the reason he's likely to be a top 5 pick in the draft. Yes, he's a good receiver. Yes, he's a very good corner, but it's the fact that he can play both at a high level that makes him valuable as a top 5 pick. Travis Hunter is clearly a Deion Sanders player. His cornerback play is elite. He's got the best back pedal in the class. He's able to keep up with all sizes and speeds of receivers. He mirrors their moves nearly perfectly pretty much every time in man coverage. His two biggest strengths as a receiver also apply to his play at cornerback. His speed, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, is elite level. He really can run with a receiver all the way to the top of the route or cross the zone, make a tackle before the receiver's got a chance to make really any more yardage off of his catch. His hands are incredible. Again, that's his second big strength. Also really good in receiver. Great at corner. He rarely drops the ball, even in contested catch situations. If he gets anywhere close to the quarterback's pass, he's going to have it in his hands. As a corner, he really can tear the ball away in a sure catch situation, even if the receiver seems like he's got it. Travis Hunter will do his darndest to make that ball his instead. He only had 4 interceptions last year, but that's because teams really avoided throwing at him because of his reputation that he built up. His best picks came really in scenarios where he did a very good job at leaving a receiver open and luring the QB into throwing directly into his hands. He'd, make it look like he didn't see what was happening. He'd be backpedaling a little far and then just jump in last second and take the ball away. Hunter's biggest weakness is something that I also talked about as the receiver, and that is he's really only 6 foot tall and barely weighs 190 pounds. He made sure tackles at the college level using his leverage well, even against players much larger than him. But at the NFL level, he's playing against athletes who are much higher level than he did in college. And he'll have to work hard to ensure he can make safe, efficient tackles that also protect his body. In my opinion, Travis Hunter is a much better cornerback than wide receiver and is deserving of a top 10 pick purely off of his defensive prowess. That being said, I think he is very likely to be a top 5 pick. Frankly, Tennessee is the only team that can and should justify not taking Travis Hunter. In my opinion, Cleveland should take him at 2, but we'll see how that goes. My pro comparison for him should be pretty obvious, and that is Deion Sanders. Um, duh. Deion Sanders' ability to play man or zone at an elite level, his ball hawking traits, they're all unreal. His speed was video game like, and Hunter profiles the same in every single way. The only thing that I think Hunter does differently is his QB luring, which, in my opinion, is better than Deion could. I expect that to show early and often in the NFL. Best fits for Travis Hunter. This is a little bit of a cop out, but I said the New England Patriots, the New York Giants, and the Cleveland Browns because they are the second, third, and fourth picks on the board.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Travis Hunter is kind of the counter to the classic joke. Cornerbacks are just receivers who can't catch. When he plays both ways, he can make the catches. And so he comes out as kind of an interesting DB who can get the picks when the ball gets to him. It was interesting the teams tried their very hardest not to pass towards his side of the field. And when he did tend to punish them. And I 100% agree that he's a much better corner than receiver. I actually really like him as a corner. I think he's the second best in this class. I would really only put him behind Will Johnson. If he is going to have to pick one position to play, I think corner would be better suited for him, though, like you mentioned, his size is a concern. But I think his speed makes him a really, really good option there as well. He has that recovery speed if he does miss a step. So I do like Travis Hunter as a corner option. Yeah, I think he will just have to focus on staying healthy for sure. All right, moving on to the linebacker position. My favorite prospect at linebacker is Alabama's Jihad Campbell. Jihad Campbell seemingly has the ability to teleport and see the future when he's on the field. His play recognition was absolutely elite at Alabama, and I'm confident that he will continue building that skill in the NFL. At 6'3", 244 pounds, he's an absolute beast, the same size as Derrick Henry, and he ran a faster 40 than Henry did at 4.52 seconds. I've seen him compared to Tremaine Edmonds, and I do like that comparison. I was a little bit surprised at how often he blitzed and was successful at it, having 5 sacks in 2024. He was solid in coverage and good against the run game as well. And I think some good fits for Campbell would be, on one hand, some more desperate defenses like we talked about with the Bengals or the Panthers. But I also think he would be a really good fit for the Washington Commanders. Obviously, they've got Bobby Wagner there, but I think they're going to need somebody young to come in and take his spot soon. And I think Campbell would be a really solid option who could start this season, but would definitely be able to be a starter in 2 or 3 years. What did you see from Campbell?
Yeah, it's rare that you see a player with that much weight on his frame play with that much speed. I think he is the prototypical box linebacker. I like the comparison to Tremaine Edmonds. He's just insanely fast. One of the things that I really liked about him was his diagnosis ability. It seems like the play is in slow motion when he's there. He's able to see it unfold. He's able to think about it and say, what's the best angle for me? He's able to recognize these blocks are forming. This defender's going this way. This defender's going this way. I'm going to take this angle. And I think an underrated thing that I really liked from him is his hit power. It's not always the first thing you look for in a player, but when you can just take somebody's helmet off, and just keep walking right by, that's that's something to be paid attention to, in my opinion.
Yeah, I loved how instinctive he was instead of reactive. I think that's a really important thing from a linebacker. All right, who did you pick out as your favorite linebacker prospect from this draft class?
Yeah, so I selected linebacker Barrett Carter out of Clemson. Barrett Carter is not a complete player like Jihad Campbell. Campbell's got all the tools to make a first round, early second round linebacker, like you said. But Barrett Carter, I do believe, has all the pieces to quickly become a starter in the NFL. The first thing that really pops off the screen for me is his straight line pursuit. It's incredibly intense. He's got great strength at the point of attack, bowling over tight ends, running backs. It doesn't really matter on his way to the quarterback. He translates that to stopping the run as well, though he sometimes gets caught too full steam ahead and can get crossed up by a ball carrier sometimes. He blitzed both from an upright position and from the edge, which really makes him a flexible option for plenty of schemes, especially 3-4s that like to kind of mold up their fronts for multiple variable fronts. In coverage, he's much better at man coverage than zone. His eyes aren't very disciplined in zone. He struggles to really get a footing there. Once in a while, he gets tripped up at the top of his man routes, but for the most part, he does a really great job with physicality on the route, keeping at their hip and undercutting the ball at the final moment. In my opinion, Barrett was one of the best tacklers at linebacker that I watched. He ensured that his center of gravity was low and he drove back to prevent extra yards. However, at the NFL level, I think that his size is a bit of a concern. He's only 6 foot and 230 pounds, so he can probably bulk up some, but he really doesn't have much more frame to do so. At this size, his run defense prowess may not be as prominent at the NFL level, but he can work on that discipline to really stay dangerous. Um, I think in the NFL, it's going to be a lot less go and bowl somebody over and a lot more he's going to be a gap fit type of player. Once in the NFL, he's going to fit really well in an aggressive defense that heavily emphasizes linebacker pressure and linebacker blitzing. Probably, as I mentioned, a 3-4 multiple front. This allows him to, early in his career, be a blitz and heavy package piece until he's developed some of that zone ability so that he can fit better into as like a will linebacker. Athletically, I think he has real potential to be a 3-down linebacker once he's, fixed up his zone coverage a little bit more. Based on that, I think he's probably a mid to late third, maybe early fourth round pick. My pro comparison for him is the Kansas City Chiefs linebacker Nick Bolton. Bolton was my immediate thought because Bolton, a lot of people don't know, is only 5'11", but he is a ball of energy and aggression. He's not as often, the Chiefs' first line of defense against the run, but he's a great straight line attacker, just like Barrett Carter, and he's clearly very solid at zone defense. So if Carter can improve that zone coverage, I believe he can and will be a 17-game starter in many defenses around the league. Some fits, I think, right off the bat are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who pretty much need everything on defense, the San Francisco 49ers, who just lost a couple of linebacker pieces and definitely could use somebody to rotate, or the New England Patriots under Mike Vrabel. He loves his fast, gap scheme type of linebackers that can really make an effect in the pass rush.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did not realize that Nick Bolton was that size. That's really fascinating. And that makes
Yeah.
that comparison make a lot of sense. Something I noticed when I was kind of going through his stats was that he had kind of a drop off in a lot of the stats from 2022 down to 2023 and 2024. What are your thoughts on that? What caused that? And do you think that's going to be an issue moving forward?
One of the first things is that with Dabo Swinney leaving Clemson, a lot of their coaching staff changed, and so I think defensive scheme wise, it definitely changed a little bit more. He was expected to be a little bit more of a coverage linebacker later in his career in Clemson, so that definitely affected like his sack numbers. But frankly, as an off-ball linebacker, the difference between 5.5 in 2022 and 3.5 in 23 is not that large. Especially when on film he really pops. You watch the film and he really pops off that screen with just his playmaking ability, and you see those tackles for loss. You see the track down ability that, yeah, sure, he doesn't tackle the running back behind the line of scrimmage, but he makes a tackle a yard afterward, and he's incredibly good at just tracking down, hitting the player early. And I think that's really what I was looking for when I was watching Carter. Is, sure, maybe the scheme wasn't exactly what prioritizes sacks, but it allows him to really sit back, play incredibly aggressively, let the offense come to him, and react in a way that really makes him a dangerous weapon for a defense that runs him correctly.
I ended up picking a second linebacker to talk about. I really like the linebacker position specifically, and I decided to pick a second one here, and I went with Smile Mondon Jr. from Georgia. I think Mondon is a really balanced linebacker prospect. He's great at pursuing, he has good instinct when blitzing, and he's about the same size as Campbell at 6'3", 235 pounds. One of his biggest weaknesses, though, unlike Campbell, is his time to react. He's a lot more reactive than instinctive, kind of like what we talked about with Campbell, but in reverse. When in coverage or against runs, he tends to be just a little bit slow and like a step behind where you would ideally want him to be. I think he can definitely start in the NFL, and with some good coaching, he'll be able to start reacting a little bit quicker and projecting plays out in advance, though it might take a little bit of time on that front. Mondon is currently projected to go around round 3, so it's hard to tell who might pick him. Coming from Georgia, there's a pretty good chance that the Eagles will end up picking him up. They do like their Georgia players. But he could also be a solid option for a team like the Packers to go in and develop. They also kind of like some of that more physical linebacker play, and so I could see them also being an option for Smile Mondon to go to. What did you see from Smile, and what do you think about him?
One of the first things that really pops out when I'm watching Mondon is his absolute flatline speed. You talked about he's a little slow to respond to the run, but in terms of coverage and shooting a gap when it's open, he's an athletic freak. He's incredibly fast, very long. He's a big guy, and I think he's the prime example of an athlete who isn't necessarily embracing that position of linebacker yet. And that might just be, Georgia's got a great defense, so he was able to slot in and just, play whatever. But if he comes in, third, fourth round to a team that's willing to allow him that time to develop, given those tools that he already has, he has the ability to be a starter at any position at linebacker. He could even be an edge rusher for some teams. And I really think that that's a really cool trait that you don't see in a lot of players, where you can bring them in and put them wherever and really develop them based on what you need.
Yeah, that is a real plus. We're going to talk a little bit more about that type of player here in a couple minutes, but why don't you start us off talking about safeties now? Who is your favorite safety from this draft class?
My favorite safety is what a lot of people would consider the consensus best safety in the draft, and that is Georgia's Malachi Starks. Starks is a great tool on defense, especially in zone coverage. He really plays best in single high or cover two situations where he can keep his eyes down, really let the offense unfold in front of him, and read and react based off of that. He was a track star in high school, and it really shows with his ability to fly down for a tackle on a receiver. He even uses that speed to make waves in the run game, coming all the way up from his position at safety to make flawless angled tackles. And despite being an average sized safety, he's got great tackling even against much larger ball carriers. A lot of people started talking about, him maybe dropping in the draft because his combine testing was middling at best. But frankly, I don't think that that stands against his elite speed and movement on field. And that's something that I've always had an issue with in the combine. Is the combine is a great way to see those things in a testing environment, but sometimes just, on field play is going to overpower what you see in the combine. And Malachi Starks is a prime example of that. He does struggle, however, if he's put in a man coverage situation or if he's dealing with complex routes occurring in his zone. His eyes tend to be misplaced. He misses the ball because he gets a little lost trying to focus on the quarterback. But he is an elite zone coverage prospect and only needs a little bit of development. In a defense that allows him to really flex his run defense mechanics and develop that eye discipline, I think he's a mid to late first rounder, no problem. My pro comparison for him is somebody who really just screamed that same type of player, and that is the Atlanta Falcons' Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates and Malachi Starks, like I said, they're essentially the same player in sizables and on field performance. They're both best fit in a defense that really focuses on them staying deep and not leaving. Maybe come down for a run defense tackle, but the best thing for them is cover two, cover one, maybe quarter, half, for them to focus on just sitting back and covering those deep receivers, reading, reacting. When left to their own devices, they become very dangerous ball hawks with elite speed and tackling ability. That being said, one of my good fits for Malachi Starks is the Atlanta Falcons, who I think could use a safety. Another one is the Minnesota Vikings. And then my favorite personally is the Philadelphia Eagles, who just got rid of CJ Gardner Johnson, who himself was a very good zone coverage ball hawk. The Eagles are really good at drafting and developing players, and they do have a couple players on the roster that they seem comfortable playing if need be. But I think that Malachi Starks would be a great option if they do decide to go and take him at 32.
And of course, he's from Georgia.
Right, they do like their Georgia
They
defenders.
love Georgia defenders. Yeah, I do like Malachi Starks. I like what I saw. I love the Jesse Bates comparison. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize it until you said it, but that is exactly who he looked like on the field. Um, I think the Vikings would definitely be an interesting fit. I think they do need a little bit of help at safety. Um, in fact, I have them listed as one of the potential landing spots for the safety I'm about to talk about, who I think is across the board better than Malachi Starks. He's got better stats. I like how he looks on film more. And that is Nick Emanwari from University of South Carolina. He is a very solid safety. He broke out in 2024, finishing the season with 88 total tackles, 2 passes defended, and 4 interceptions for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. Physically, he is absolutely elite. He might be the most physically impressive players in this draft class, period. This is backed up by his perfect 10 out of 10 RAS athletic score and his 4.38 40 time. At 6'3", 227 pounds, he is as big as the linebackers I talked about earlier, just a little bit lighter. And some people have even said that he could potentially switch to off-ball linebacker if a team wanted him to. He could easily play strong safety or free safety, or even shift to nickel corner or linebacker as needed. I kind of see him like a DB version of Micah Parsons, where you can move him around, you can do whatever you want with him, put him anywhere, and he will be just fine. As for his actual pro comparison, I've seen some people comparing him to Jeremy Chin, though I think he's a lot more natural as a safety and a lot more physically impressive than Jeremy Chin. I've seen a couple projections having him picked in the second or even third round, with some people even listing him as an adequate starter. But I firmly believe he is start ready day one and worth at least a mid round first pick. I could see the Bengals going for him. Obviously, we talked about how terrible their defense was, or the Vikings, like you mentioned. Although I think another pretty decent fit would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You did say they need a lot of help on defense currently. They did just sign Antoine Winfield to a pretty big contract, but with his ability to kind of move around, I think he'd be a fun option for them to kind of slot in wherever they need at any given time.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair for a safety to weigh over 215 pounds and run a 4.38 40-yard dash. That is unreal. Unreal. Now, to kind of respond to you about, you said he might be a good fit at like a linebacker. I think he's a great, rotational linebacker. You put him there for certain heavy packages or things like that. But I really do think you take advantage of that speed and size combo. Keep him at safety. Use him in more creative ways than just telling him to move to linebacker. In my opinion, I think he is what the coaching staff in Arizona wanted Isaiah Simmons to be. I think that they really wanted him to be a versatile safety who could come down, make plays at the line of scrimmage, and still be a fast cover man. But it never really worked out because Isaiah Simmons struggles sometimes with keeping his eyes down, really good balanced safety play. But I think that Emanwari is much better than that. One of the things I will say that does get past him, though, is because he's so big and physically talented, he sometimes is a little over aggressive and overplays his hand, allowing players to make him miss or just completely missing himself. But I think he is start ready. I do agree with you there. I think he is a player that Sean McDermott with the Buffalo Bills would really like, just in terms of his flexibility, being able to fit really well into that zone heavy scheme. But I digress on player fit. I would love to see him go in the second round. Um, you know, but I think the biggest difference, as you said, he's one of the best safeties in this draft. I think the reason he's not going in the first is just because he goes to South Carolina, which is a smaller football school than Georgia, and so Malachi Starks is inevitably going to get more attention on that level.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And yeah, I don't think he should by any means fully switch to linebacker, but I think he definitely has the size and the physicals to be able to play that position, when needed.
He's an incredibly versatile defender. Yes. Speaking of
Yeah.
versatile defenders, my next player, in my opinion, is an incredibly versatile player who can play various positions in that secondary, and that is Texas product Andrew Makuba. As I said, he's very versatile. He plays equally well in a single high position as he can in the box or even at slot. His greatest strength is his route recognition. He covers routes as if he's the receiver in the set. He matches the player step for step and comes in at the very last second to snatch or bat the ball away. When playing deep, he's got a great understanding of where receivers are in relation to his zone while keeping his eyes on the quarterback at pretty much every second of the play. When the ball's thrown, he has incredible downhill running speed, coming down to make the tackle at lightning speed. His biggest concern, in my opinion, once again, this feels recurring, but it comes from size. Makuba's only 5'11", 185 pounds, and it does affect how he plays even at the college level. He's pretty much a non-factor in run support, even now, and he can't shed blockers, even if they are smaller blockers. He even struggles on running backs. When he attempts to make tackles, whether in the open field, on running plays, no matter what, he does it pretty much the same every time, and that is an ankle tackle, which can lead to serious issues at the NFL level with missed tackles, getting crossed up by a ball carrier. These guys are much more talented athletes, and that is a massive concern in my book. He needs to learn to be more physical, use his weight to his advantage while still protecting his body because I understand he's a small guy. Besides this weakness, though, Makuba is a great zone coverage safety with the ability to play in a multiple coverage defense where he can be flexed into slot man in some situations, though not all. The more you keep him away from having to tackle, the better off it is for him. Many say that he's a third rounder, but I think even with the tackling concerns, he will probably sneak into the bottom of the second. My pro comparison for him is the Chicago Bears safety Kevin Byard. Makuba's elite route tracking and step for step movement reminded me almost perfectly of Kevin Byard, who has a really great feel for the motion of the game himself. There's a reason he's been a leader in interceptions for years because he understands receivers' routes, keeps his eyes unwaveringly on the QB, and Makuba is just the same. The thing that Kevin Byard does, though, that's made him such a long time safety is he can tackle. Yes, he's a small guy. Byard's not big either, but he tackles, and that is what makes him valuable for years and years and years in Tennessee. Some good fits for Andrew Makuba if he can get over this issue are the Chicago Bears, where they've already got a set of safeties, but Kevin Byard is, on the older side, so that gives him some time to really learn and play just kind of a flex safety for a little bit so that he can really get into that starting level development. Another one is the Indianapolis Colts, who had the worst secondary in the league last year, so any help is good. That'll be a reprieve. Or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who also could use again, any real help on defense, especially at safety.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about Kevin Byard, I don't believe he ever missed a game either with the Tennessee Titans at the very least. If he did, it was very, very late in his career with them. So that's another thing that Kevin Byard has that Mukuba is going to have to really work on, especially at his size, is not getting injured, not missing games. But yeah, we were talking a little bit before recording, and I was looking through Makuba's stats because I didn't look a whole lot into him. And I see 2024, he had 5 interceptions, and before that, across 3 years at Clemson, he only had one. And I was like, wait, is this legit? Like, is he actually this good? Was he just right place, right time? And you said, yeah, absolutely. He really is that good. He runs with the receivers, and I think that's a really, really impressive thing to go into the NFL with is that ability to just move right along with a receiver. We see a lot of corners who kind of react; they play a step behind. So the ability to be able to move with right on there with the receiver is definitely something that could go to his advantage.
Yeah, it definitely makes him one of the better man coverage safeties in this draft. And another thing to note too is his interception numbers weren't super high at Clemson, but his pass defended numbers stayed high. And not always are those recorded necessarily perfect. Interceptions are a little easier to do. But he again, yeah,
Yeah.
not always did he necessarily get his hands on the ball. But frankly, I'm not nearly as worried about the defender catching as much as I am about the receiver not catching when it comes to a defensive player. Once again, everybody, thank you so much for watching. We love having you guys. Give us a like if you haven't already. Leave a comment. Who do you think the best linebackers and DBs are in this draft? And keep an eye out. Next week is our draft live stream. We would love to have as many of you as possible to come in. We plan to talk to you guys all throughout about your own opinions, our opinions, and stay up late, have a really great time watching the draft. And I think we're going to have some surprises. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next week.